Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_daddy. Well, I want to do a second run-through to really get to know these guys. Obviously, we've spent a lot of time on Matthew Golden, but I want to kind of zoom in a little bit more, especially looking at what other people kind of had to say about him, looking at some other different perspectives, especially people that really liked him. Because I'm still in sort of the understanding the vision phase. And so with each one of these picks, I want to zoom out and make sure that we can really get a good look at what the Packers seem to think. Obviously, you look at more positive perspectives if you want to know what the Packers think. It wouldn't make any sense to find somebody that didn't have Matthew Golden in the top 100 on their draft board and say, what do you think? Oh, well, I guess we're screwed. Everything sucks. I'm going to cancel the podcast for the day. Before we do that, touching on a couple little topics here. First of all, I have to say, the Shaduer Sanders thing continues to get more and more ridiculous. The Shaduer Sanders defender, can I just say how hilarious it is that we're going to pretend that this guy is some kind of a massive victim? He has grown up in the amount of privilege that this kid has and has had his entire life. He has grown up beyond rich. He has had trainers and the great, like literal NFL football stars training him to be a football player his entire life. He has received massive sums of money all throughout college. He's already unbelievably rich. Pretending that this is some poor, Matthew Golden, we lost our home and we're living out of hotels and all that, pretending that he is some kind of a victim here because he slid in the draft, which is his own damn fault for being a cocky, arrogant douchebag, and for his dad saying that basically we're going to refuse to play for X, Y, and Z team because obviously we can just pick wherever we want to go, and basically treating some teams like the Browns like garbage throughout the process. He fell. And we're all supposed to believe that because somebody prank phone called him, this is like the greatest offense we've ever seen. And this kid's life needs to be ruined, and the Falcons need to have a draft pick removed from them and need to have serious punishments. The NFL has come out and they're doing an investigation. This whole thing is pathetic. There are some people who are very angry that they were wrong about Shaduer Sanders. They're very angry because they believe some kind of a horrible thing has happened, and they're taking all their anger out on this kid. It's not about the prank phone call. It's about the whole thing, and they have nowhere to put their anger, and so they want to put it on him. They want to ruin this person's life over a freaking joke. By the way, a very common and old joke. The amount of prank phone calls that happen to draft picks is remarkable. Everybody's pointed out Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean had a prank phone call. He had somebody call and say, hey, this is so-and-so from the Green Bay Packers. We're going to draft you. Guess what? Unfortunately for us, that wasn't actually the Green Bay Packers, and he didn't get drafted, and he fell into the second round. Baker Mayfield, there's a very famous thing of him. Now, that was his buddy standing right behind him, but again, it's a joke. So his buddy calls him up, and he stands up, and he looks around, and he's like, why would you do that? And everybody laughed. There's a thing here. Bills draft pick Chase Lunt received 5 different prank phone calls throughout the draft before finally getting drafted by Buffalo. 5! He went in the 6th round. Is the NFL going to do an investigation into that? Should we ruin lives over that? No, because nobody actually cares. Nobody cares about Chase Lunt, which is exactly why I'm saying this is about protecting Shaduer. Precious victim Shaduer, the poor thing. I tell you what, if we want to punish this kid who did a prank phone call, we should punish him the way that the NFL punished Shaduer, by offering him a job worth millions of dollars. Because that was his punishment. Shaduer's punishment was to get a job to be a quarterback for a national football team and get paid millions of dollars to do it. And somebody called him and pretended to be a team that was going to draft him, and it wasn't real. And then somebody else drafted him, and then lectured him immediately about, please don't be a douche when you come here because you're kind of a douche. He treats people like garbage as a way of life. And there's videos everywhere. It doesn't take, I have Dozens. People have done entire threads of things Shaduer Sanders has done. He poked a guy he just stuck his hand in a guy's face mask and poked him in the eyes. He went after a freaking ball boy. He taunted fans. He taunted quarterbacks who tried to shake his hand and he got in the guy's face. Not to mention who knows what's going on in these meetings where people are saying it's the worst meetings they've ever had. He is a cocky, arrogant person. And the negative thing that has happened is his fault. And because people don't want to admit that, they don't want to admit that Shaduer Sanders is suffering because of his own actions, they want to go out and punish the first person they can see that they have some kind of an excuse to do it. And the fact that the Falcons came out and they said, yeah, this sucks, shouldn't happened, we'll have to look into it or whatever. They lost. No, this is fireable. This is fireable. Oh, will you shut up? Shut up. Again, stop being a hypocrite. Come over here and say that there needs to be an investigation into Chase Lund. Well, this is different because how do you know it's different? Who got his phone number? You don't know and you don't care. Why don't we do an investigation and find out who handed out his phone number? Or Cooper DeJean's phone number? Anybody care? Should we do an investigation? What if it was from the Packers? Maybe Gutekunst's nephew overheard, the phone number or saw the phone number somewhere and did it. Should we be punished for that? Maybe we should lose a draft pick because of poor Cooper DeJean, another 22-year-old multimillionaire football player. Maybe we should ruin lives and careers because of a very temporary inconvenience. That's probably what we should do. Congratulations on being a very moral human being, because you just care so much about one person who's not a very good person and who's been a spoiled brat his entire life, because that person means more to you than anybody else for some weird, creepy reason. You want to lash out and attack people because you're super moral. I get it. No, that's great. Good job. Well done. Am I a fan of the prank phone call thing? No, probably not. It's pretty immature and stupid. But that's it. That's the full extent of it. Did I laugh a little bit? Yeah, the ending was a little funny. Well, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. Sorry about that. The sorry about that at the end kind of got me. But, you probably shouldn't do that. It's not very nice. It's not great. It wasn't very nice when I did prank phone calls when I was a kid. And I'm glad that nobody tried to ruin my life over it. Speaking of, Albert Breer brought up a couple specific instances because, obviously this is just about confidence. All it is, you can't handle a powerful man here with confidence. Okay, you stupid idiot. Let's take a look at a couple instances that when he dug in, found out, what exactly happened in those meetings. So there was one instance where he sat down with the team. The team sat down and showed him a play where he threw an interception. They said Shaduer Sanders refused to take blame for that interception. Breer goes on to say that as they dove deeper into it and how it might relate to the NFL level, Sanders simply concluded that he and the staff he was talking to might not be a match. Okay, think about that for 1 second. I told you that some teams took him off their board. I guarantee that's a big part of the reason why he slid. And the Browns are probably one of those teams. At least, if not completely off the board, they were like, yeah, we're not doing it. But when he fell to the fourth, they were shocked and were like, I guess, which would explain why when they drafted him, they immediately went to the podium and they're like, look, dude, frickin', I swear on all things, if you screw this up, if you make us look stupid again, think about that. You're sitting down as a quarterback. This is how arrogant he is. He assumed he would go first round easy. He sits down with the team shows him something negative, which is pretty standard. Here you go. Here's a negative thing that happened. Think about this from the standpoint of this is going to happen every day as a football player when they sit you down and show you mistakes that you need to improve on. They showed him an interception. They showed him a mistake he made. He refused. The team went on to try to be helpful and say how it might relate to an NFL thing. He interrupts them and basically says, look, man, I don't think this is going to work between us. I don't think this is going to be a good fit. How insane is that? In another visit, Breer reports Sanders didn't pick up on intentionally planted mistakes in an install when called on it, the resulting exchange wasn't pretty. He is not coachable. This is a guy that's been coached by his dad the whole time, and his dad has apparently never pushed him like this. His dad has apparently treated him like the prince, and everything is everybody else's fault. Because the fact that immediately when he is coached, he lashes out. A team planted some mistakes hoping that he would notice it. He didn't notice it. They stopped it and addressed it and said, hey, just so you know, we put in these things here and you didn't pick up on it. And Shaduer apparently went off on him. The resulting exchange wasn't pretty. So yeah, ESPN reports via Adam Schefter, the Falcons will take no action against defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich for his son's role in Sanders' prank call. No freaking kidding. You think I'm going to fire my defensive coordinator because the kid made a prank call? This is a minor note. Hey, bro, can you try to put a password on your iPad or something? One that your kid doesn't know, and make sure your iPad's off? And also, would you mind talking to your kid and say, please never do this stupid crap again? Thanks. Otherwise, we move on with our life. Bunch of petty psychopaths that are obsessed with Shaduer Sanders that just can't let something so small go. Grow up, dude. Oh, and breaking news right now, Jordan Schultz reports the Packers have signed linebacker/safety Isaiah Simmons, formerly of the Giants. Very cool. So I guess we should talk about him a little bit. I kind of lost track of him. I remember when he came out of college, and everybody was obsessed with him. He could be any position on the field. He could play corner, he can play linebacker, he can fire off the edge, he could play safety, is what everybody said. I, number one, didn't really like him as a player, didn't really see it, and I felt like a lot of what it was is the versatility. Everybody's obsessed with the versatility. And the question is, can he do any of them well? That was my question. 6'4", 238 pounds, ran a 4.39 40. Absolute freak, no question about it. But can anybody harness that and figure out what to do with the guy? Arizona Cardinals in 2020 drafted him as a linebacker, used him in a hybrid role, linebacker, slot corner, and safety due to his versatility. He played 409 snaps as a slot cornerback in 2022 alone. In 2020, he had 47 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 pick, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery in 16 games, 7 starts, which is not great when you are drafted as early as he was. But was named to the Pro Football Writers Association All-Rookie Team, which doesn't surprise me because writers don't know anything. He had a 59 PFF grade, 57 run defense, 76 tackling, 54 pass rush, 70 coverage. 2021, he kind of got his first start. He dropped down to a 49.7 grade, 40 run defense, 60 tackling, 66 pass rush, 56 coverage. His final year in Arizona, he got his grade up to a 68. Run defense is still terrible. Pass rush got up to an 83. He had 9 pressures and 4 sacks on 65 attempts. Still a 70 coverage grade. Then he goes over to the New York Giants, and he doesn't start. He was acquired by the Giants August 24th for a 2024 7th-round pick. So think about that. You're an early first-round pick. He was taken number 8 overall. He doesn't even play for 4 years. After 3 years, he gets traded for a 7th-round pick. I'm not trying to just crap on the guy. I want to set reasonable expectations and help you to understand exactly how this has been going. In 2023, he played 378 snaps. As a starter, he played 1,000, just to give you some context. And no, it wasn't because of injury. He played in all 17 games, started 4 of them as an inside linebacker. He did have a pick 6 against Sam Howell, week 11, as sort of a highlight. But overall, not super great. He had a 70 overall grade, mostly because of his 83 coverage grade. Again, no run defense. The tackling was terrible, and the pass rush was not good. He didn't even have 8% or 10%, which as a linebacker is really bad. And then 2024 for the Giants, it just fell off a complete cliff. He played 181 snaps, 45 PFF grade, 61 run defense, which was his best ever, 49 tackling, 53 pass rush, 43 coverage grade. He actually re-signed with the Giants on a 1-year, $2 million deal. He did block a game-tying field goal against the Seahawks, which was returned for a touchdown by his teammate. He earned Special Teams Player of the Week that week, which is something to keep in mind, that this could also be, not only is he probably a piece that the Packers are interested in, who knows, maybe they want him to come in and be a freaking corner. I have no idea what the intention is here. He's primarily been a linebacker, but he's done a little bit of slot work and safety work and all that stuff. I assume he's not going to be a safety. But it will be interesting with Hafley. I do like this group that we've got. We did lose a important piece as far as a inside linebacker coach who did a phenomenal job. I think we saw some incredible stuff with Edgerrin Cooper. We saw Walker start to take a little bit of a step. It is a little bit different, so I did a little bit of research. He's had 3 different defensive coordinators, Vance Joseph, Wink Martindale, and Shane Bowen. Wink Martindale was kind of seen as being sort of similar, just in the fact that it was very aggressive. But all 3 of the other defensive coordinators are 3-4 teams. Vance Joseph, 3-4, kind of a hybrid front, so there was some 4-3 stuff. Wink Martindale was 3-4, a lot of nickel dime. Shane Bowen, 3-4, a lot of nickel. Jeff Hafley, 4-3, also, again, a lot of nickel type stuff. And so when you look at, again, this is, I'm trying to get AI to help me out a little bit with this, so take it maybe with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I mean, this is actually super detailed, and I'm pretty impressed with it. But Vance Joseph was his primary guy, 3-4 again, and it had Simmons playing various roles: inside backer, slot corner, safety, and outside backer. For Wink Martindale, hybrid safety linebacker with snaps at inside safety and slot, also played a bunch of special teams. Shane Bowen, primary nickel with occasional safety linebacker snaps, significant special teams contributor. Anyways, I went down to Jeff Hafley, and obviously it doesn't know how this could all work out, but here's what it says. Likely a big nickel or hybrid linebacker safety similar to Quay Walker or a poor man Xavier McKinney would play nickel corner safety or weak side backer with special teams duties. Hafley's use of man coverage aligns with Simmons' best skill. He has an 82.7 PFF coverage grade in 2023. He could cover tight ends, big slots, or running backs, leveraging his 4.39 speed and 6'4 frame. As for blitzing, he says Hafley's got a moderate blitz rate kind of compared to all of them, with Wink Martindale being the heaviest and this being more moderate compared to that. Would give Simmons a chance to rush the passer where he is effective. He does have a decent chunk of sacks. Hafley's ball-hawking scheme suits Simmons' playmaking, who has 5 interceptions and 8 forced fumbles, as seen in his pick sixes. He has 2 of them in 2021 and 2023. He does actually have a good amount when you look at his coverage. Where are we at here? His touchdowns, he's given up 10 touchdowns, which isn't great. Half of those were in his rookie year. But the interceptions, he has 5 interceptions over his 5 years. Last year was the only year he didn't have a pick, so it kind of does align with that sort of ball-hawking mentality. So you get a guy like Isaiah Simmons, and I think it can work from the standpoint of, if let's assume he's maybe just not the greatest ball player, he's got some good ball instincts, like going and getting the ball, and then can use athleticism. Perhaps with Jeff Hafley, it's a little bit less thinking and a little bit more go. Just go. Hafley's use of versatile players, McKinney as safety nickel, matches Simmons' skill set, allowing them to flex between linebacker, safety, and nickel without being overburdened. Simmons' proven value fits Hafley's emphasis on athletic contributions in all phases, and that obviously includes special teams as well, not just Hafley. So we'll see. I mean, this could be a signing that he doesn't even make it. Could absolutely be the case. Somebody had just said, who was that? Too old for this, says, I think the signing, I like the signing, but it reminds me of Jalen Smith, which it reminds me of that too. Jalen Smith was a relatively high pick, and it just never clicked. We brought him in for a little bit. He played a couple snaps, and I remember watching it and just thinking, this is bad. I mean, he wants it so bad, and he's trying, but he has no idea what he's doing. But I mean, it's not like we haven't had success with guys before, you know? I think we have a really talented group. I think that they have a plan and a vision for a guy like Isaiah Simmons, and they obviously found a price that works out to get him in, try him out, and see what happens. All right, why don't we take a break? We'll come back and start digging into our first-round pick, Matthew Golden. So I want to start... It's kind of a weird way of doing things, but I want to start, again, just looking at Golden, and I want to hear what guys like Goot and Matt LaFleur had to say about him.
Do you feel like it helped the explosiveness of your offense at all in the last 3 days?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I think Golden, you know, his ability to take, I mean, you can't coach 4-2-9, so, or whatever they had him at. So, between him, Savion Williams, another big explosive.
Pause it there because he delves into Savion a lot. I'm excited to really dig into him. But just kind of prefacing that a little bit, that's one thing, and he'll elaborate a little bit. But obviously that's something the Packers are not seeing as a fluke, the 4-2-9 thing.
Yeah, you can always use a lot of speed at receiver. I think you can find different ways to use them, but what was so impressive to me when you talk about Savion is, well, obviously Golden ran what he ran. So anytime a guy's breaking sub 4.3s, he's legitimately fast. And I think what's so attractive about a guy like Golden is not only is he fast, but he's got, I would say, elite hands. He can run through a football. And then Savion.
Again, we'll cut it off there. We'll get back to Savion another time. We'll get there.
Yeah, so, you always want to kind of connect with the quarterback when you get him some pieces. And so I FaceTimed him, and he's like, man, sub 4.3. He's like, I got to get that arm loose. So, he can roll. And I said, hey, man, you're just going to have to get that ball up on time and out early.
That is pretty fun. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are frustrated that Rodgers didn't have that. But Rodgers had Devontae, and Rodgers had Jordy, and he had a lot of really good freaking wide receivers. So it's cool that, you can reach out to Jordan, who's sitting there watching the draft. I can't even know. I wish somebody was recording that, by the way, just to see his reaction. Be like, oh it's going to be sweet. And then, Savion Williams following that up, a big offensive lineman. I'm sure Jordan was expecting, kind of like a lot of us, a relatively heavy defensive draft again. Obviously you'd like to see a wide receiver maybe in the second round or something, but to go wide receiver, offensive tackle, wide receiver, Jordan's got to feel pretty good about that. I'm listening through this, but it's so tempting to play other non-Golden pieces that are really good. I probably shouldn't be doing things the way I am, but that's fine. We're sticking with the freaking thing, okay? A couple things. I'll just bring it up since he talked about it, and we can just kind of put it in the back of our mind. The question was asked, you didn't get to play your style of defense. Do you think based on what we did, based on, the guys that you got, not very much, but whatever, that you can go back to the style that you wanted to play? And Matt LaFleur essentially said, I don't know if we want to go back. He mentioned that what's really important is style of play, which he obviously doesn't mean scheme. I think he's just talking about, attitude and just playing well, doing whatever style of football you're playing, play it well. And he was talking about, I think maybe we were playing our best football in that Philly game, essentially saying, if it wasn't for the picks, we had a pretty good shot of winning that game. Defense was playing great. And so I think he's pretty happy with the style of play. And he also mentioned the fact that you can throw multiple things at an opponent. In other words, we might dabble and go back this way, or we might stay here, but being able to be fluid with the way that we play defense is an asset. The other thing that was mentioned, so I don't know if you know this, Matthew Golden started a YouTube channel. You can go subscribe to it. Right now there's one video up, and it was sort of a behind the scenes for his draft day, which is super cool. It's kind of like a home movie. So some of it's, I don't know if you want to sit there and watch 20 of the 40 minutes of him kind of getting dressed, in his outfit. But one of the really cool things in that video, he and Barron Sorrell are teammates. And, they're good friends. Sorrell is a very well-liked guy. But it was cool. Right after he got drafted, he goes back to the hotel. He's kind of unwinding. He's hanging out. I don't know who this other dude was he's hanging out with, probably a teammate or something. He's hanging out with his family. And then he gives a big high five and a hug to Barron Sorrell. This is 2 days before Sorrell even gets drafted. He's wearing the same outfit because he's wearing his draft outfit, which is kind of interesting to think about. Probably most guys don't go through that because they are either at home or they're there and they get picked up day one, maybe day two, but you have one outfit picked out for this is what I'm wearing for draft day. He wore that day one, he wore it day two, and he was wearing it day three. So, but no, it was just cool. It was cool to see, not even realizing that we're about to be teammates again. Him giving a big hug at the hotel, and it was like maybe two teammates there. And Sorrell was one of them. So very, very cool that those guys are teammates. And both of them were in Green Bay, and both of them got drafted and got to spend time with. I think Barron Sorrell got to have one of the best experiences of a guy that got drafted. It's unfortunate it wasn't day one with all the hype that comes with it. But he basically, it was like, it's day three. You get the whole place to yourself. You can just spend the day going around and hanging out with Packer fans, and he did. He went out into the stands. He went to Lambeau Field. He was doing Lambeau leaps. He was taking pictures. So, anyways, he brought that up that they were teammates, and I thought I'd mention that. If you didn't know, go check out. I'm assuming you can find the YouTube channel under Matthew Golden, but pretty cool little watch. Again, you might skip a little bit, but it's a very cool video. I'll play this little bit here because it talks about Golden and finding out his teammate got drafted.
Combine that with the fact that I mean, it's ironic that he and Golden were teammates, and they were both here. And I texted Matthew right after that pick, and he was ecstatic. He said he was in the middle of a workout, which you love to hear anyway, but he said he got turned up from that, so that was pretty cool.
It's funny hearing Matt try to say turn up, which I can't really do it either, but no, very cool. Like Matthew Golden's already in the lab, dude. He's already working out. He's fired up, and mid-workout he gets a text that his boy, who he's been hanging out with all week, is a Green Bay Packer. Just such a freaking cool. I hope these guys pan out, man. These guys are destined to be great, because if this is a bad draft, there's nothing worse than looking back and going, that was a fun experience. Terrible draft, though. Like, these guys, it has to be a good draft, right? Here's a little bit, Matt LaFleur one-on-one doing an interview with The Rock.
Offense. Let's talk about those fellas. Matthew Golden, what do you think?
He's electric. He's got elite speed, things that we can't coach, and I love his versatility. I think he's a guy that can go inside or outside, so it was a great moment for him when he gets picked in Green Bay, and we're really excited about it.
Here's a little bit from John Eric Sullivan.
Obviously we have a young quarterback that we really like, and we need to make sure that we're protecting him first and foremost, So I think, with you look at what we did in free agency with Banks, you look at the second-round pick and Anthony Belton, we got to make sure that we're keeping him upright and healthy. That starts there. And then I think anytime you're thinking about the skill, you want to make sure that you're giving Matt the flexibility to attack all different levels of the field. And I think a guy like Golden does that. He's speed. He can get vertical. He can beat you underneath, and he's got tremendous ball skills in hand. So it's just another weapon, and I think he fits really nice in the room with guys that we already have. It'll be a nice addition, not only the player and the skill set, but then the person. He's wired right. Being a good football player is very important to him, and I think he's going to jump in that room with the guys we got, and it's going to be fun to watch those guys compete and see what shakes out.
Here's Brian Gutekunst talking one-on-one with The Rock. This was after the Matthew Golden selection.
And Brian, tell me about Matthew Golden, wide receiver out of Texas, your first-round draft choice.
Yeah, so Matthew started at Houston, spent 2 years there, was a very good player for them, and transferred to Texas this past season. And really had an excellent year, played in some really big-time games in the playoffs. And he's fast, really athletic, got excellent hands. And I just think that he's a Packer. He's the kind of guy we want in our locker room. I think he's going to fit in with our guys, and it'll be exciting to see how he integrates into our offense.
You mentioned fast. Well, he's like warp speed.
4-3 flat.
Yeah. No, he's fast initially. He can get off the line of scrimmage and certainly stretch the field. But he's a lot more than just a fast guy. He can get in and out of his breaks. He gets open against man coverage. And like I said, he's got excellent hands. And just, again, very versatile player, can play inside, can play outside, can do some kick returning as well. So I think he's going to be a guy that can help us in a lot of ways.
I don't know beans about playing wide receiver, but it looks like when he goes after the ball, he just kind of snatches it or plucks it out of the air, and he's a hands catcher. Is that accurate?
He is a hands catcher, and I think that's an important thing for all of our receivers. And I think he's just scratching the surface of what he can be, and I think he has a chance to be a very good pro.
He also seems to have a knack for making big plays in the big moments. That's got to be attractive.
Yeah, and I think that you got to give him credit. Taking the step up to Texas where they were playing in big-time games and playoff-type atmospheres. You need some of that as you develop, and he certainly answered the bell when they called on.
Brian, do you have a sense of how happy you made the Packer Nation, who was in force out here tonight, how happy you made them by selecting a wide receiver in the first round?
Probably not in the moment, but as Mark got up and we got to watch it in the draft room and watch him announce it. And first of all, I think it wouldn't matter who we would have picked. That atmosphere was electric from the beginning of the day before the draft started. You could kind of feel it. And then just watching that live, it was just one of those really special moments in Green Bay to have the draft here. And you just got to give Mark Murphy so much credit for his ability to get that done and the vision. And like I said, it was just, I think the whole organization just is really, really proud of what we saw tonight.
And then I think this is the last one here. This is Brian Gutekunst speaking after the Matthew Golden selection.
Got
really excited to bring Matthew into the fold. Think he's going to do a lot of things for us. He's just obviously he's a very gifted athlete, gifted football player, but he's also just wired exactly how we want our guys in the locker room. And I think he's going to fit in really well. And with that, I'll take some questions.
I get that once you're on the clock, it's a football decision, right? But Mark mentioned it before announcing Matthew. It's been 23 years. We obviously ask you about it every single year, which I'm sure you'll miss.
Yeah.
Is there any, given the moment, given that it's here, given the drought, is there any even consideration of, wow, this is significant to finally take a receiver in the first round?
Well, I really said it in a different name, but Mark just announced what he announced, so it is what it is. No, I don't know. I didn't think about any of that until he got up there, and then you kind of saw, you saw the crowd. They're all Green Bay fans. You heard the chants and all that kind of stuff, and it was just really cool. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't even think anything like that. We were watching the board. We had a couple players we were discussing. There were straight opportunities, things like that. So you're going through all that and just trying to do what's right for the Packers. So none of that really came before me like that, but afterwards it did. It was just kind of like, wow, that's pretty neat, So.
Brian, he's 5'11", which maybe isn't your stereotypical outside receiver frame. Do you think he can play everywhere, and why do you think he can play outside?
Yeah, that's a good question, Matt. So, he's kind of above the Mendoza line for that outside, but not by much. Obviously, he has elite speed, right? His ability to stretch the field outside the numbers is really, really important. And when you watch him, we thought arguably he had some of the best hands in the draft. Not only coming back to it and running through it, but when he tracked it over his shoulder and stuff too. So. He's a strong athlete, so he's really versatile. He's going to do a lot of things, but we certainly felt that he could play outside, and that was important to us.
Brian, what did you like or what stuck out to you when you sat down with him and he was here on the visit and any other times you talked to him?
Authentic and genuine. Like, this guy's been through some things now in his young life and come out the other side of it. And I think he's just very authentic and genuine. He knows who he is. He loves football, and I think he's going to be a great teammate around here. So just, again, those were a lot of the things that kind of, and we knew that before we sat down with him. I mean, that was what everybody said at Houston and Texas, and everybody who's been around him. But it's certainly getting to know him that came through.
And he told us he wants to be pushed. Is that what you mean when you say it's wired the way you want him to be wired?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things. But I just think this kid wants to be great. He wants to win. So he's been chasing this thing, and like I said, I think he's had adversity in his life, and he's come out the other side of it. And the odds were probably stacked against him a little bit. He's no player is perfect, and I think he's one of those guys that is just going to really work hard at it to be the best he can be.
Do you see, or what do you see in him? Do you think he can play a lot and contribute a lot in 25?
I do. We've talked in here before. I mean, I think the world's changed a little bit. It always takes receivers a little bit of time to get going. It used to be kind of that end of year 2, middle of year 3 when they really, things slowed down for them and they could really produce. Certainly we've had a lot of history with that, where that happened. I think because of the high school football and the way they throw it around, 7-on-7s, and just some of the things that have changed on the lower levels, guys are coming in and making an impact quicker. And I certainly think Matthew has the opportunity to do that. Now, we got some good players in that room, so he's not going to have to kind of carry the load that way. But I think he has a chance to contribute, not only as a receiver, but I think he's got some special team return ability as well that could help us.
With that said, how much did you feel like this offense, obviously the injury to Christian, the way that the season ended last year, really needed to add an infusion of that type of speed and playmaking at that position?
Yeah, that's good. And I think I told you, I didn't really think we needed to at all. Certainly it's nice to, and we want to add as much talent and competition in that room as we can. I felt really good about our room prior, and if we would have gone a different direction, I would have had no problem doing that. He was, that we had a couple of guys on the board that we really, really liked, and he just, like I said, I think he won us over, not only his play on the field, but just who he was.
Brian, you were at his pro day, right?
I was.
I heard it was really good. What did you see, and did something in that jump out to you?
Yeah, I mean, again, pro days are pro days. They're scripted. They're not in pads and stuff, but he had a good day. He catches the ball extremely well. I think that's the thing that jumps out at you, not only on tape, but when you see him play live. But I think that the one thing about, as we scouted him, he's a third-year junior coming out. He's a young guy, and I think he has his best footballs ahead. He's still got a lot of room for growth. You know what I mean? He's not at his ceiling, and I think when you went to the pro day, like, you know, just I think he had progressed from the season till there with some of his route running, some of the things he did. So, yeah, he had a good pro day again, but that's, you know, this is scripted, and that can be a little tough to put too much into.
Brian, how did you see his? You just mentioned progress, but how did you see his game progress when he made the transfer decision? You know, when he went from Houston to then playing at Texas in the SEC.
Right. Yeah, and if you followed it, you know, early on in the season, it was his production and maybe his reps and targets and things like that. It took a few games to get going, and then once they kind of realized what they had, then it just kind of took off, and he became a major part of what they were doing. So everyone speaks very, very highly of him there. That's obviously a very good program, and they train guys very well. So as does Houston. So I think, you know, he had 3 really good years, and obviously making that jump to Texas and playing in some of the games that he played in at the end of the year and producing like he did, I think certainly that helped him.
You know, along those lines, Brian, you talked about the challenges of scouting in the portal world, but does it help you in some regards that you got a guy who's been into school for 1 year, you got to see how he went from one system to another, how he can learn, because that's obviously what he's going to get thrown into here.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, he's been in 2 systems, right? You know, and I think the one that he was at Texas was probably a little bit more closer to will resemble what we do. You know, not obviously there's still going to be a big jump, but I think that was helpful to see him go from there to Texas, kind of step up a little bit in competition and still produce at a high level.
Why'd you bring him in for a visit?
Say?
Why'd you bring him in for a visit?
Oh God, man, a couple weeks ago.
Why?
Oh, why? Oh, I just think he's a young kid, 3-year guy that transferred, you know, and it was just one of those things we just wanted to get to know him a little bit better. And we had a really good meeting with him at the combine and it felt really good, but we just kind of thought he was one of those players that might be staring us in the face like he was, and just wanted to get a little more comfortable with him.
Brian, there was some stuff out there that the Eagles were trying to trade up to 23. How close were you to trading back, and was there any consideration to not do it because of who was trying to trade up?
That last question, no. I don't care about that, but there was a few that we were talking to, and there was some opportunity to move back. You know, they were tempting, but at the end of the day, we had a good player we all really wanted throughout the building, and I just thought it was the right thing to do that because, again, you know, when you move back, it's unpredictable. You know what's going to happen. So we had pretty good numbers, but I just thought this was the right thing to do.
Giants call you? Sorry, Giants call you?
A few teams called us.
With a guy that has the kind of straight line speed Matthew does, what do you look for to know that that's important, but the fluidity to really be able to run the entire route tree, to be a presence on all levels? What do you look for to know it's not just sprint?
Yeah, sure. I think and that kind of goes back to one of the other questions as far as you know, what they were doing at Texas as compared to what they were doing at Houston. I think that was helpful for him. He was asked to do maybe a little bit more there. But yeah, I mean, you know, he ran all the routes this season that we needed to see, and certainly when we go through the combine and the pro days and things like that, I mean, they put those guys through pretty much everything. So if you have anything you're worried about coming out of the season that he may, you know, not do well, you have an opportunity to see that. And but he's a premier athlete. He's going to be able to do everything we ask. And so really it's just going to be a matter of how quickly he can get up to speed and get comfortable with the offense and the players around him.
Back to the height, what is the Mendoza line you look for a guy that can line up on the boundary?
I think, you know, I don't know if it would probably be right at that 5'11" mark, but I will say that there are guys that have played out there that have been under that height, but they usually have to have some kind of special trait. You know, and speed is one of them. You know, I mean, you have to be able to stretch the field. I don't look at this when you meet him and stuff, like he's put together pretty well. So I don't look at him as a small guy. You know, I don't look at him like a guy that you could only play inside. He can play inside. There's no doubt about it. But he's going to be versatile enough to do whatever we ask him to do. So.
You talked about the versatility and him being able to play inside and out. You've got some guys here, Jennings, Nelson, and Driver, that have done that as well. Yep. Is that something you guys value? Maybe you were talking about special traits. Is that something that sets a receiver apart as opposed to somebody who's more set to just play in one of those spots?
Right. I mean, versatility is always great. You know, I think, you know, the way, I will say, with the way Matt and his staff are able to kind of be creative and use these guys, that gives me a lot of flexibility with what I'm looking at, too. Like, they do such a good job of scheming some of these guys and using them to their best ability. it does make it easier for me, so we don't feel like we have to do this or we have to do that. That Matt and his staff will find a way to make these guys productive and fit them into what they're trying to do. So. Again, we obviously spend a lot of time talking about these things and how it'll affect our football team, and all those guys on the offensive staff I think are pretty fired up right now.
Ryan, he talked about playing against NFL caliber DBs in the SEC.
Yeah.
How much does that aid in your evaluation when he's from a major conference? Because you've had others that aren't playing out of the SEC. How does that help?
Yeah, it's not everything, but it is. I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, I think it's a big deal for their development. Certainly, I think obviously when you're going against NFL-type players every day in practice, which he was, one got drafted in the first round tonight, that's different than maybe a guy who might see an NFL guy once in 11 or 12 games during the season. You know what I mean? So to me, a lot of that is, with some of these bigger school guys, it's the every single day I better show up and perform because there's a 5-star behind me that's ready to take my job if I slip up. So the fact that he made that choice to move up, again, it's much more normal than it ever has been in the world right now we're living in with in college football. But he made the choice to go chase it, and then did what he did. I think it says a lot about him.
Your thoughts on his return abilities?
Yeah, no, dynamic. He can be dynamic. We'll see. I know. Not only our offensive staff, but I think our special team staff was pretty fired up too. So we'll see. I think certainly kickoffs will be an easy transition for him, and I think he can do some punts as well. So we'll see. But yeah, he's when you take a guy in the first round, that's not the first thing I'm thinking about. But at the same time, I do think he'll help us there.
There were a couple corners and 2 or 3 undersized rushers still on the board too. What made this guy the better bang for the buck?
Yeah, no, there was a bunch of good players on the board. We could have gone a number of ways. We just kind of felt this was the best thing for our football team. And like I said, I think the guy mattered. I certainly the players, first and foremost, but the person matters as well. Who we're bringing in this locker room, and this guy's a fit.
Hey, you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier with Mark, but seeing him make that pick and obviously the reaction that he got from the crowd being in Green Bay, how special was that?
Yeah, it was pretty neat in the room. I can't imagine what it was like out there. But it was kind of one of those things where you're involved in getting this done. And then there's still things going on, and then all of a sudden you kind of, look up, and Mike in our room turns the volume up so we can kind of, watch it. And yeah, it was just one of those, really special moments for our staff. We had a bunch of people in there, and Mark means so much to this organization and so much to each and every one of us to kind of see that moment unfold like it was pretty cool. Yeah.
When you're evaluating a receiver with a young quarterback already in place, you know who that guy is. Are you just evaluating the receiver, or are you thinking in what ways this guy might fit with your quarterback and that chemistry going forward?
I think a little bit of both, but certainly, I mean, whenever you're adding a player, particularly a skilled player on offense, like how does he fit in with your team? You know what I mean? And where's he going to make a short-term impact, and where would he be long-term impact? And so yeah, I think that's a part of it.
In what ways do you think that Matthew might be able to aid and bring out the best in Jordan?
Well, certainly he's going to be a speed threat right away, right? He is one of those guys that from covering him and from a man perspective is going to be extremely tough on teams, so when we get to some of those third down things where people are trying to mug us up and we need someone to get open fast, he can do that.
Very important, by the way. Very important part, because that was something we just couldn't do when we lost Christian. When we lost Christian, they would just mug us up, get in our face, and there wasn't a lot we could do about it. Another thing, since it's at the top of my head and I might forget it later, that I wanted to bring up, I think one of the complications, I said this constantly last year, but it's important. One of the complications, especially after losing Christian, is not knowing what to do. Who do we build a game plan around? Who's going to be that guy that I can trust? Who's that guy that you can go to when you need a play? Because 1 minute it's Reed, 1 minute it's Dobbs, 1 minute it's Wicks, you never knew who that guy, Tucker, you never knew who that guy was going to be. We need a guy that we know can be the guy that we can build a game plan around, and that's one of the big things that a lot of people say about Matthew Golden. I don't know if I'm going to be able to really play it because it didn't sound all as interesting. There's not a lot of really good clips that I can pull, but let me just tell you, Steve Smith, former wide receiver, very good wide receiver, he has a YouTube channel, like a lot of these guys do, breaking down receivers, and Matthew Golden was his number one receiver, ahead of Tetaroa, Ibuka, the whole crew. It was his number one guy. And one of the things that they did talk about was the fact that you had two really good receivers there, and you had a big-time speed guy, faster than Golden, speed guy, dynamic player. But when Texas needed a play, when they needed a guy to go to in a critical situation, they went to Matthew Golden. And I think that's one of the main things that the Packers are really looking for is we need a guy that can be the guy. X, Z, slot, whatever. Who gives a crap where he lines up? The bottom line is we have to have a guy that when it's game on the line, 3rd and 7, the defense knows who we want to go to, but we still trust that he can be the guy. He can run the route properly. He can make the catch. He can do the thing. I think that was critical for the Packers. I felt like they didn't have it. They know that if we don't get it, that we're in big trouble, and that's kind of the thing. Well, there's a lot of good players on the board. Why go this direction? Why not corner this, that, or the other? We cannot do what we need to do without that type of a player, and it's not impossible that we can find somebody like that, but I felt like they looked at it and said Matthew Golden is probably your best option in this entire draft at doing that thing that we need. Possibly, you could talk about Tetaroa, but at the same time, Tetaroa does not provide the speed, which is also kind of critical in these kinds of things. I think Golden probably checks more boxes for what the Packers need than anybody.
And then I think for me, and this goes back to, just as I can hear Ted in my head, but you got to catch it, and he has such good hands, you know what I mean? And I think, for me, that was a big part of it too.
You've always told us you can't fall in love with a guy, but sometimes it happens, right, Ted, with Clay, for example. You saw him at the Combine, you went to his pro day, you brought him in for a visit. When did you really start to like Matthew? And also, he said he wanted to get a workout in tonight. Is that okay? You gonna let him in?
Technically, I don't think he's not allowed to come in tonight. I don't know what the schedule is for him getting in here, but I think to your point, you can't fall in love with players. You have to be kind of a little bit more, less emotional about it as you go through it. But I think early on from the tape, when we get in February together as a group, our scouts really liked him coming out of the fall. So we had good grades on him, so we knew he was going to be. You knew he was going to be a guy we're going to spend a lot of time on. And then when you watched him in February, it was, he just was a really good player. So then it was a matter of we can't ever skip any of the steps along the way. So, so I think every time we had an opportunity to be around him, whether it was, on his campus, the Combine, where we brought him in here. He just kind of checked the boxes, you know what I mean? And and a lot of guys did. We had, there was other guys in this draft that did as well. But he just, he felt like he was going to be a really good fit.
Brian, I just asked Matthew tonight, how ironic is it that you come here for a visit 2 weeks ago, and then yesterday you're coming on the talk show and you run into the GM and you shake hands, and he said, my visit here was remarkable. And he said right there when he was with you, he was like, come get me. When he was sitting on the board at night, did that go through your mind? Like,
no, no, but I don't do a lot of that stuff. Those kind of shows. And then when I did it, and when I was there, he wasn't there. And so when I got up and I was leaving, I saw him, and I walked. Obviously he had been here already, and we had talked, so we knew each other. And so I went over there and, we started talking, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be all over something, right? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it was or it wasn't, but I did think that at the time. I didn't think about it during the draft tonight at all. But again, I think it was a really good night for the Packers. I'm really eager to get back at it tomorrow, see how this thing falls tomorrow, and see if we can do some good. So, but I think you guys are going to really like him as you get to know him.
So, all right, that's a pretty in-depth everything the Green Bay Packers specifically have said. I want to take a break and come back because, like I said, there were several people that had him, we took him at 23. So, which people felt that 23 was a good value, great value, etc., and then what did those guys have to say about him? So I want to take a little bit of a look at that. We'll be right back. So again, might as well start with this. Again, the thing with the Steve Smith is Steve Smith, plays it cool. So he kind of downplays everything, but at the end of the day, he's saying, this is my number one receiver, et cetera, et cetera. So he did have high praise. It sounded so flat that there's no real oomph to be able to provide to you. So just a couple examples here. First of all, you've got USA Today. Let's see if I can find out who this is here. This is Ayrton Ostley. I'm not sure who that is. But USA Today did a big board, and they did have Tetaroa McMillan as the top receiver. They had him ranked 14th, but very closely behind at 18th, they had Matthew Golden. He says, Golden's combine performance has him in a new tier among wide receivers. He's an ideal number 2, which is a very common thing. Even Steve Smith kind of talked about that a little bit, so it doesn't feel necessarily like a negative. I think the point is they see him kind of as a Z receiver, and so he's not that X, I think is kind of what you're talking about, but whatever. 18th best player in the draft. He's an ideal number 2 wideout in an offense thanks to his speed, route running, verticality, and ball tracking on deep passes. Had him, ahead of Ibuka, Walter Nolan, Luther Burden, James Pierce, etc., etc. This one I was hoping there would be some kind of a write-up, but they didn't do a write-up, but I still wanted to bring it up because it's such a high ranking. Over at DraftPlex, they did a big board, and they had Tetaroa as the top receiver as the 7th best. Matthew Golden ranked 12th. Head of Jade Barron, Colston Loveland, Kelvin Banks. So that was really impressive. Over at NFL Trade Rumors, Ethan Woody had Tetaroa number 1, ranking 10th. Matthew Golden, 17th. The fastest receiver at the Combine, Golden pairs that speed with phenomenal route running chops. His instincts and length at the catch point make him a true weapon to be a potential number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. Jeff Legwold over at ESPN did a big board. He had Matthew Golden 17th and the number 1 wide receiver ahead of Tetaroa McMillan. Golden averaged 17 yards per catch in his only season with the Longhorns, with 58 receptions, 987 yards, and 9 touchdowns. The Houston transfer had the second fastest 40 at the Combine. When he's dialed in, he can separate from even the best corners and is dependable no matter where he lines up. And then a very familiar person here, Dane Brugler, writer of the Dane Brugler Beast Draft Guide. He has Tetaroa McMillan ranked 12th, Matthew Golden 15th. So again, it's kind of like he's maybe the number 1, number 2, but it's very close. He says, it might bother some teams that he doesn't have better size, but Golden also doesn't have any glaring flaws to his game that would keep him from becoming a productive pro. He can play inside or outside and become the go-to target for an NFL offense. I think one of the most flattering comps that I've heard for Matthew Golden is a more athletic Amon-Ra St. Brown. When you think about it in those terms, where it's like, oh man, he's not like an X receiver, like I don't know, that's kind of upsetting. Does anybody give a crap that Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't an X receiver? Have we ever once gone up against the Lions and said, well, at least he's not an X? Who gives a flying crap? Over at commanders.com, this is just the Washington Commanders site, but Logan Paulson, who writes for them over there, they did a big board. They put Matthew Golden as the number 1 receiver by pretty much a pretty wide margin and the 11th best player in the entire draft. He says he has a tremendous feel for playing the position and understanding when and how to vary the speed of his routes while not losing any speed through his cuts. He also catches the football at an extremely high level. And again, we've talked about the drop rates and kind of use that as like the main metric for everything. But at the end of the day, when you watch him, you watch how smoothly he catches the ball, hands catcher, hands out away from the body, but also the body control that comes with it. He really is impressive. Another very respected person, Daniel Jeremiah, put together a top 150. He had our boy, Matthew Golden, the number 1 wide receiver, ranked 14th overall. He says Golden has average size, but he plays with tremendous polish, instincts, and toughness. He spends a lot of time operating out of the slot. He can defeat press coverage with quickness or strength. He understands how to tempo routes and sets up defenders down the field. He can change gears when the ball goes up and he tracks it naturally. He does a nice job of staying grounded through the catch when working on crossers. He has the utmost confidence in his ball skills. After the catch, he is very strong/sturdy to pull through tackles, and he can make defenders miss in space. I love his temperament on the field. He plays with an edge. Overall, Golden doesn't have dynamic traits, but he's a natural football player and a quarterback's best friend. He's dependable. Again, coming back to that, everybody talks about the 4.29, but then the secondary conversation is, yeah, but he doesn't play with 4.29, so it's like, well, crap. This is what makes him great, but also it's not. That's not what makes him great, though. I don't think a lot of people prior to the combine, first of all, expected him to run 4.29. I'm guessing that was a shock, including to Matthew Golden, who ran a 4.29 and then said, I'm never running a 40 again for the rest of my life. He didn't run his second 40 at the combine. He didn't run at the pro day. That is probably the fastest 40 he's ever run, and said, holy crap, all right, I'm not doing that again. But the point is, his massive assets, I think, are largely outside of that 4.29. I think that's a distraction. Eric Edholm, NFL.com, had Tetaroa number 1 as the 12th best receiver, Matthew Golden number 2 as the 14th ranked player on the team. I'm fading here. 14th best player in the draft, running a 4.29 second 40-yard dash and acing the interview process has bumped Golden's stock up. He'll be a first-rounder even though he lacks a big frame. Some teams believe they can use him more effectively than Texas did. It's also an interesting note. This is the final one here. This is 33rd team. Pretty solid website. This is Tyler Brook. I think Tyler Brook is a Packers guy. I'm not sure, but he's writing for 33rd team. He did a top 50 big board. He had Tetaroa number 1, but ranked him 6th overall. Matthew Golden he has as his 8th overall prospect in the entire draft. Matthew Golden checks almost every box you want in a Z receiver. He's got vertical speed, sharp route running ability, deceleration ability, I was like, that doesn't make sense, to maximize separation, and excellent body control to be an acrobat on the sideline or come away with contested catches. He's about as complete of a receiver as you can ask for, even if it took a while for him to burst onto the scene this year at Texas. So that's kind of what I've settled into. Do we want to call him an X or a Z or a slot or whatever? What matters is that not Matthew Golden, but Matt LaFleur can put him where he needs to be the most dynamic player. There are slot receivers that dominate the NFL. There are Z receivers, there are X receivers that dominate the NFL. Again, there's a difference between number 1 and X. You can be a Z and be a number 1. We still need to find an X, whether that be Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks. I'm not sure who that is. My hope and prayer is that it's Savion Williams, but everybody seems content to just call him a freaking running back. We'll see. He does have a lot of work to do in refining his route running and being a little less sloppy, a little bit more refined. I get that. I understand. But the point is, just put him wherever he needs to be the best receiver he can be so that he can be the number 1 receiver. And again, maybe I'm just stupid or whatever, but when somebody said a more athletic Amon-Ra St. Brown, it really just clicked in my head. Who gives a crap? Who cares? Who cares if he's going to end up being the X receiver? Let this guy go out and just dominate for Jordan, and then we'll let the rest fall into place. Well, what about Christian? Bro, you can put them both on the field. I don't know. I don't know exactly, but I want him to be the best receiver and to put him out there where he needs to be, and we'll figure the rest out. That's it. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. Tomorrow, the plan will be Belton, which I'm excited about because I need to watch a bunch of Belton so I can have my own thoughts on him. I didn't really get into that with Golden because nothing really changed about what I saw with him other than to just continue saying what I said before, which is essentially that the guy is more than speed. That's it. His hands and everything else are what make him great, and I'm excited. Anyways, I'm out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you tomorrow or tonight or whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.